Good morning and welcome to the Spring Product Update. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Richard Saunders. I'm the Contensis product owner. I work alongside Simon Horan, our Chief Product Officer, to set the roadmap and direction of Contensis. So let's start this morning by looking at the new features that are coming up in the latest release. We're really excited to be announcing site view permissions, the ability to control who can create and manage URLs and the associated content in your site view tree. In order to do this, we've had to completely re-implement the Nodes API. We've recognised that some organisations can have thousands of permissions applied across your site view tree. And to do that, we've needed to start again with the Nodes API to support this. Whilst we've been re-implementing the Nodes API, we recognise the need to be able to get the full URL path on a node, and that's now available. We've also introduced a new move endpoint, the ability to update the nodes and where that location of those nodes are placed. And alongside the new move endpoint, we've introduced a new webhook so you can understand when a move has been triggered. We've also recognised that in time that we're going to want to be able to preview and publish changes on a node. And so in order to do that, we've needed to introduce a version property, and we've done that now, so that's in place. All that said, permissions are all configured in the roles builder. From here, you'll be able to control who can create and manage nodes, who can attach content or maybe make changes to renderers and things like proxies. So these permissions are broken down into three groupings. Node actions, who can create a new URL, update them or delete them in the site view tree. And then alongside the creation of nodes themselves, who can manage the entries that get attached to those nodes, who can replace maybe your homepage or a landing page, or who can add and create content of a specific type within a site view section. There's also advanced actions, things like who can update a renderer, where can proxies be set. All of these are configurable in the roles builder. For authors, once permissions are set, they'll get two different views within the site view tree. They can either view the entire site view tree or see where they have permissions applied, allowing them to just navigate quickly to the areas that they commonly use. And based on the view that they select, it will be remembered the next time that they come to that screen. So let's see that in reality with a demo in Contensis itself. So let's head over to Contensis. So here we are in Contensis. We're in our Leaf demonstration project. And if you are used to using site view today, you will see this view of the site view tree, the ability to manage nodes, edit any of these nodes, make any changes that you need. Well, with site view permissions in view now, we can control which menu options are displayed by setting them up in roles. So let's take a look at roles and how these permissions are set up. So here I am in the roles listing. I've already set up a bunch of different roles with different users assigned, and in my browser here I've got different users logged into these different tabs in order for us to kind of see what these permissions look like. So let's start with the marketing team. Now this might look a little bit complex at first, but we have a series of permissioned actions that the marketing team can do, and they're broken out into the different categories. So firstly we have entries. So what entries can the marketing team manage? Well, they can create blog posts and they can carry out all actions. So they can create, publish, archive, unarchive, and so on. They can make changes to the homepage. So they can save and update the homepage, and they can submit their changes for approval. They can create content pages and landing pages. And they can carry out all actions, so they can publish and change landing pages. But as we look into this list, we also see a bunch of site view permissions. And it's here that we can set up the granularity and control of permissions within the site view tree itself. So in the About section, so within this location here, we can say, right, I want a permission for site view. I want to set the location to the About section of our site. And I want to say for the selected URL, so /about, I want users to be able to create nodes under it. So I want marketing team to be able to create URLs in the About section. But then in this second permission, I want to control what type of content can be applied to those URLs that they create. So again, I've got the location set to About, but this time I'm saying for /about and its descendant, so any URLs that sit under the About section, I want them to be able to manage entries governed by this permission here. And the manage entries permission is also associated to the types of content that they can manage within that section. So in the About section, they can manage content pages and landing pages. The same can be said for the blog section. So they can create nodes in the blog section, so they can create new blog URLs. And they can also update those URLs of the blog section, this time to just the descendant, so just the blog posts, the individual blog posts themselves within /blogs. And they can manage entries of the blog post content type. So they can't do content pages in the blog section, just blog posts. And for the root node of their site, so the selected node only, they can manage entries of the homepage content type. So let's take a look at what it looks like for the marketing team. Let's head over to this second tab, head over to Site View. And once we're in Site View now, we can see a similar view. Now, we're seeing the entire site view at the moment. That's the default view. So they're seeing the About section, they're seeing blog, and they can still see products. Alternatively, they can switch the view. So I mentioned that a user has two potential views. So now if they click to My Site View, they will only see the blog section and About section because this is the only areas that they have permissions on. If they click on a privacy policy, for example, they will see that entry because their permissions in this roles builder says that they can manage content pages. And this is a content page, so they can manage the content page within the About section. And they can manage landing pages within this section, so they can edit that content. And when I click on this menu now, I can create new entries within the About section. I can add existing entries into this section, and I can create new nodes in this section, all because the roles that have been outlined govern those actions. So that's what it looks like for the marketing team. But what about another team? Let's take a look. We've got this other idea of product editors. So these product editors can create, submit and publish, schedule pots and plants. They can create nodes in plants, so they can create new plant URLs, they can create new pot URLs, and then they can manage entries within /plants that exist and make changes to those plants or pots. So let's take a look what it looks like for a plant editor. So we'll head over to Site View again. You can see we're seeing the full tree for this user, but if we switch it to My Site View, we'll only see the product section, and we can see plants. They can edit these plants and open them up for editing. And when they go to create a new entry in this section, it only shows the plant content type. If I collapse this folder and look at this pots, again, if I go to add existing entries into here, there's actually no entries to add at the moment, but these are limited to just pots. But if I want to create a new pot, when I create it here now, we'll see the content type list has been filtered to just show pots because my permissions only allow me to create pots. So this provides lots of flexibility to your end users. They're able to only see where they can create content or manage content. And then all the actions are scoped based on their roles builder permissions. We think this is going to provide a lot of flexibility and prevent those kind of accidental removals or the management of content in a particular section. And we hope you're really going to love this feature. So let's head back over to Keynote. And continue where we left off. So the next feature we are introducing in the next release is commenting, the ability to collaborate on content and create comments on entry fields. So you'll be able to start a conversation on any entry field, and we don't limit you to a single conversation on a field in an entry, but you can start multiple conversations. So if you've got large bodies of text or different needs to converse on, you can do that. There's also support for mentioning other Contensis users, so being able to draw in other Contensis users into the conversation on a piece of content. And you can tidy up those comments or conversations by being able to resolve or unresolve comments that have previously been resolved. So you can bring up a conversation from the past. Alongside this comment functionality, we've also introduced some comment webhooks so you can understand when comments are created or updated or replied to. And the way we've created our commenting API, we've made it really extendable. So at the moment, you can apply comments to an entry field. However, we've considered that maybe introducing comments to renderers or comments to blocks or redirects within the Contensis interface. We're not limited to where we can introduce this comment functionality in the way that it's been built. So let's take a look at commenting itself with a demo directly in the CMS. Let's get back over to the CMS. So I've logged into a user now, so I can interact or see some comments that already exist. So I've got an entry open. So I've got this aloe vera plant. And now you'll see in the right hand toolbar, we've now got a comments button in the panel. And it's showing that there are two conversations within this entry that are going on. So if I click on the panel, I can see that there are two conversations. There's one on the growing conditions and there's one on care advice. So if I head over to growing conditions, I'm directed to that tab within the entry itself. And I can see that there's a question that I've raised. Are these all the conditions that we need? Alternatively, I can navigate to a field itself and view the comments on that field. Does this read well for our audience? But we've also got previous comments that might have existed within this entry. So if I click on active comments now and go to resolved conversations, I can see that there was a previous conversations about the photos. So let's head over to the photos section. And we can see here's the conversation that has occurred between myself and the marketing team, asking if maybe we can look to replace these images with some new ones on our next shoot. And we can say, right, actually, I want to bring this conversation back from the past, so I can unresolve this conversation and bring it back. And I can then say any update on this at marketing team. So we've got at mentioning, and we can hit reply. So we can get a bit of an idea of commenting within Contensis. And again, this is just going to really aid collaboration between your authors. And we're really excited by this feature as well, because it's something that we know that we're going to use when we're producing content, and we know it's a desire that you guys have had as you've fed back to us on Product Board. So let's head back over to Keynote. I also want to touch on the fact that we are planning to introduce a new dashboard. So when you log into Contensis into your project, you'll be directed to a new project dashboard rather than the entries listing screen. And that's going to give you visibility of things like your comment activity that is going on. So as you can see in this left-hand panel, we've got a set of comments that have come through on different content. And you'll be able to kind of click through from these comments directly into the entry and open up the comment panel directly to that conversation. We've also got this new entry listing panel on the right-hand side, and that enables you to use existing saved views that we previously released in Contensis to get a quick snapshot of content in this sort of home screen. We plan to do a lot more work on the dashboard, and we're really excited about this feature. So as I mentioned, we have comment activity, when you've been mentioned, comment since your last reply or when conversations have been resolved, and a new entry widget that allows you to use customized views based on existing shared views that you've created in Contensis. So as well as site view permissions and commenting, we're also introducing redirects into Contensis. Redirects have previously been available in a SaaS dashboard that you've been able to use, but we wanted to bring the management of redirects directly into Contensis and bring roles and permissions in place so you can make this feature available to who you feel it's necessary in your organisation. It still uses the same technology that redirects has previously, so all your existing redirects will be visible within the interface when you come into Contensis. As I mentioned, it's all based on roles-based permissions, so who can create and manage existing redirects. You'll now be able to search and filter those existing redirects within the management screen. And I think the best way to take a look at this is directly in a demo. So let me head over to Contensis again. I'll go back to my first user and let's look in settings. If you've got permission, I'm logged in as an administrator here, but you'll see redirects in the left-hand menu, and you're taken to a new redirect screen, which has got a familiar look and feel if you're used to using the entries listing screen. And you can see the redirects that are available on this site. So we've got basic search. So if you wanted to look for where there was a redirect with the About section, you could simply filter by keyword and that will search the source and destination. Domains, you can filter by status code or the particular match type that you're using. From the new redirect screen, you can create a bunch of redirects in sequence. So this modal will be familiar to those who've created redirects before. We've tried to give a little bit more clarity around the expected values. And if you want to create a series of redirects, you can create them one after another, similarly to creating multiple users in Contensis. Editing a redirect is as simple as selecting the Actions menu and clicking Edit. And again, you can make the appropriate changes that you need. So that's that. Because we're using similar management screens as we do in the entries listing screen, you also get the power of managing the data that's presented here. So you can reorder the columns, but you can also see when these redirects were created, who they were created by, and when they were modified. So you can see I created these today, and with my user information presented. Previously, when you published redirects, it could take up to sort of a couple of minutes to deploy those redirects, and we've got this down to a few seconds now. So when you update or add a new redirect, within a few seconds that will be deployed to your load balancers and make those redirects available. So That's redirects in Contensis. So let's head back over to Keynote. As with all existing Contensis updates, we've made additional changes to the interface. So by introducing the new dashboard, we've also introduced this idea of surfacing new entry favorites. So when you click on the split button in the interface, when creating new entries now, you'll see your favorite content types listed to take one step out of creating commonly used content. So as you see here, we've got plants and pots and blog posts as a quick access menu. Proxies that were created in previous version of Contensis were never displayed in the site view tree. So when you've attached a proxy now into site view, you'll see those proxies presented. We've also introduced the surfacing of discovery errors in blocks. So if for some reason your block isn't being discovered, we highlight this in the UI. So as you can see from the screenshot, we've got a couple of error statuses with a question mark. And when you click on those question marks or open up the version details, you'll get a reason why that block has not been discovered. So in this case, it exceeds the 512 megabyte container size. We've also introduced Contensis single sign-on to the blocks toolbar. So if you use ADFS or Azure, you'll now be able to log into the blocks toolbar using single sign-on. And we've made real efforts to continue our work on accessibility. So having worked with the Digital Accessibility Centre, we've identified a couple of areas where there needed to be some improvements to some of our existing components. So first is the chip component. And we've brought simpler keyboard functionality to that component. And in doing so has also brought a simplified screen reader experience as well. And when Contensis was being tested with Dragon, we recognised that all our radio buttons, checkboxes and toggles weren't always clearly communicated. And this is because we were using a modern practice of what is called implicit label setting, and this is where a label element in HTML is wrapped around either the checkbox or the radio button and is implicitly implied that this is the label. Well, Dragon doesn't recognize that, and so we've updated all of our labels on checkboxes and toggles now to be explicitly labeled, so using the ID and the for attribute to make sure our Dragon users can clearly hear those changes. So that's the latest version of Contensis, but what are we doing? Well, we're continuing to work on a whole bunch of features, one of which we've mentioned in the past, which was Zapier. Zapier is actually now in public beta, so you can head over to zapier.com and start creating zaps to integrate Contensis with a whole range of applications. I do have a quick demo which I can show you of this in action. So let's head back into demo mode, and I'll go to Firefox. And what you'll see is I've got two tabs here. Firstly, I've got Zapier. So I've created a zap, and a zap is basically a start of an integration. It requires a trigger to trigger the integration, and an action that the integration should carry out. So if I go to edit this zap, we can see we've got when an entry is updated in Contensis. So we've got this trigger action, go and create a spreadsheet row in Google Sheets. I won't go into this into too much detail, but when I edit this action and view its details, we can see that we want to connect to Contensis as an application. So if you wanted to use a different integration, you'd select those integrations here. So that's my trigger app is Contensis. and when an entry is updated. And we've got a whole bunch of events that can take place, so when entries are created, deleted, unpublished, and so on. Then what account should we use? So in this case, I've set up API keys in Contensis in preparation, and the configuration of that, and I've got my connection there. And once that account has been configured, we can choose which project should be used for the Zapier integration. So in this case, it's the website, and it's when I make changes or when I update entries in the plant content type, I want this Zap to be triggered. And similarly, when you dig into the actions, we want to use Google Sheets. The event is create a spreadsheet row, and then we can authenticate to Google, to the Google Sheet that we want to update. And then from there, we can say which fields from a Contensis entry should be placed in the spreadsheet. So here's my spreadsheet here. I've got a few columns of ID, product name, Latin name, description, and whether it's published or not. So if I go into Contensis and update a plant and just do something really simple, let's remove a full stop, really straightforward. As soon as I hit save, at this point, a webhook is fired and it updates Zapier, and shortly we should see that entry being populated here. So we've seen the content mapped from that entry into the Google spreadsheet, and it updates this document. Now I can go to another plant. Let's go to this spider plant, and we'll add a full stop in this one. I'll save the entry. Again, that fires a webhook, tells Zapier, and then Zapier updates my Google spreadsheet. So again, this is going to open up real opportunity of connecting lots of different applications with Contensis, and we're really excited to see how you guys will use this in Contensis in your organizations. So that's Zapier in public beta. So you can start using that today, and in future versions of Contensis, we'll start surfacing Zaps within the interface itself. As we've mentioned in previous webinars, we continue to work on our Canvas editor, bringing long-form content editing, things like blog posts, documentation, terms and conditions and content pages, making that long-form content easier to create, but creating it in a structured content way. Saving that content as JSON, making it really flexible to be used in different systems. And long-awaited feature, email notifications will be coming in the next release. We recognise with things like commenting and workflow actions, this is essential, and we've got a real heart this year to be addressing some of those kind of missing pieces that have been missing for a while, that we had in Contensis Classic, to bringing it to content types and entries and the new interface. As we saw with redirects and in the previous release with reverse proxies, we want to bring domain and SSL management as well into the interface, again managing it through roles. So those are some of the insights of what's coming up next. We hope you've really enjoyed today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing how you use these features. Thank you very much.